Welcome to Bamford Rose and it's question of the week time. In this week's question of the week, we look at how thinking a service can be a substitute for a pre-purchase inspection, and if the car was harbouring an issue that didn't get picked up in that service, how that strategy can be costly. Stay tuned and let's talk about that in this week's question of the week. So the buyer of this V8 Vantage did everything right. It was a super low mileage car. I think it was one owner from new. Absolutely perfect condition. Now this wasn't being sold at a franchise dealership and it wasn't being sold at a specialist dedicating themselves to the Aston Martin. So this was your generic performance car specialist outlet selling this car. Whether it is a classic Vanquish, or certainly in the case for classic Vanquish, an older V8, DB9, any of these cars, you really need a pre-purchase inspection before committing to buying them. A lot of these generic places will say, well, you don't really need a pre-purchase inspection, we've just had it serviced at the dealer. And to the green buyer, that will all seem quite okay. You know, it's gone back to the franchise network. It's had a service stamp in the book. Well, it must be okay, mustn't it? A service is exactly what it says on the tin. Screw off the oil filter, screw a new one on, fill it full of oil, maybe pump the brake fluid through the calipers, check its tyres and brakes, and hey, at franchise networks, that's the extent of your service. Mainly, allegedly. A pre-purchase inspection is a completely separate bit of work. A pre-purchase inspection, the contract between the provider and the customer, is the provider is looking at that car and assessing to their best of their ability, is there anything on this car that might need doing, that could be significant, that could affect resale value, or could mean that after you've bought it for a certain price, you have to plough some money into it, and is that journey an acceptable one or not? You know, that is the point of a pre-purchase inspection. Obviously as well, checking stuff like accident damage. So a franchise outlet that treats any job like a production line, not really petrol heads, not really making sure that the end user is getting the best enjoyment and ownership experience out of the car. It's just a transaction that's going on in the workshop. There's a huge difference between service, screwing on an oil filter, putting some oil in it, and a pre-purchase inspection, going to great lengths to try and identify previous history like crashes and notifying of that, or looming problems, maybe some engine sounds that are a little bit untoward and might develop into a problem in the future. Also, you've got to ask yourself, is the relationship between the two garages, so the vendor selling the car and the franchise dealer in the example I'm going to go through now, is that relationship quite a cozy one? You know, is there some trade deals going on for repeat business? And if there were certain things on the car that sort of fell outside of a service, whether they'd actually get noted or not. You see, if there is a cozy trade relationship like that, 9 times out of 10 cars are going to be fine, but when that one problem car comes along, how is that dealt with between the garage doing the servicing and the garage or the seller? You know, is the garage doing the servicing going to highlight the problem? And if it's quite severe, let's just say it was an engine ticking, say, well, do you know what, I'm not even going to service this car, because if I put my stamp in the book, people are going to think that I've endorsed the car. So in this particular example, this owner's done everything right. He's hunted out a low mileage one owner car. It's in near new condition, both exterior paint and interior. Everything on its service history is good, and because it's just had its service prior to him buying it at a franchise establishment, then those are all his checks and balances done. Car came here very recently after that purchase, and it was in for some work, and immediately on driving it into the workshop you can hear the engine exhibiting quite a undesirable sound. As the 4.7s can sometimes suffer, this is big end bearing failure, just about to turn from this into this. So being alerted to this by us, obviously the new owner is quite shocked and upset, and he falls back on his position of, well, it was just serviced at franchise dealer. Now, obviously, you have to give the garage the benefit of the doubt that at the time they serviced the car, it wasn't making that sound. But this just goes to highlight that a service is a service. It's not a pre-purchase inspection. It's not about identifying history and stuff that could go wrong in the future. And if there was a cosy, repeatable relationship between a vendor and a garage that was doing that vendor's servicing, then serious problems might not become documented on a service, because a service is a service. Viewers of this channel will know the information is to get a decent pre-purchase inspection done, and don't ever go off the stamp in the book. Go off that service sheets that accompany that stamp in the book. If you can't find the raw service sheets like the ones every single person gets who has a service at Bamford Rose that look like this, then I would walk away, because the stamp in that book alone without any documentation means nothing. Often those raw service sheets are omitted. Now, posh, fancy-looking establishments will say, well, it's GDPR, can't give that information across. Someone a bit more sceptical will think that those sheets have gone missing because there's information on it that a new prospective buyer wouldn't want to find out. If en masse prospective buyers walked away from cars which didn't have documentation, didn't have those raw service sheets, then vendors would have to start supplying it. And also, for your purchase, don't rely on the car just being serviced as a guarantee that something like a pre-purchase inspection would give you. The two are completely different. I'd love to help out on this. You know, I get asked to do pre-purchase inspections frequently. Now, if we had like a roving technician that every single day of the week was out doing a pre-purchase inspection somewhere, that would be fine, that would work out. I think we've got the demand to do that, but pre-purchase inspections are really tough. The garage that is selling the car doesn't really want you there, because, you know, they're adamant that they're selling a perfectly prepared car. Well, just listen to this one again. That wasn't perfectly prepared. And they'll make our life difficult. We won't have the slot on the ramp that we're supposed to have, and if we have to hang about, then that just wastes our time. If the car has been serviced at certain establishments only in its past, you can guarantee the undersurface trays haven't come off. And to do a pre-purchase inspection justice, you really do need to take the undersurface trays off, and most of those fixings are going to strip. So we'll end up stripping fixings and not really having the engineering capability to replace them or renew them, which is quite time consuming. So then the pre-purchase inspection doesn't just mean an inspection, it's some repair work to get the trays back on, because we couldn't leave the car with its trays off and a load of knackered fixings, so it's all quite difficult. But they also don't want you test driving the car. You know, we've all driven these cars for, you know, in my case, hundreds of thousands of miles, or you really know how to drive these cars. Are you adequately insured? Just any excuse under the sun to prevent you from taking it for a test drive. That's because on a test drive side of a pre-purchase inspection, we're going to make sure that we run all the diagnostic checks that would ping error lights, and then when we come back, if there weren't any, we're going to create a code that causes a light to plug into the car to then get the freeze frame data out of it, which will tell us when the fault codes were last reset. You know, they don't want you doing all this diagnostic work. If we do a pre-purchase inspection and uncover that the codes were last reset 0 kilometers ago and 0 cold starts ago, then you instantly know that something could be iffy with that car. And even here at Bamford Rose, if I'm selling a service, then I'm selling a service, and although there are the same checks on the service done that are done on a pre-purchase inspection, then if the engine was starting to develop a little bit of a tick, then the car still gets serviced, it still gets a stamp in the book. And even if the note on the service sheet was written down, engine ticking, then if that car got sold and it just had the stamp in the book, nobody would know. If I'm selling a pre-purchase inspection, then that is a contract between me and the prospective buyer, and I'm going to make sure they absolutely know everything about the car, and in documentation, important notes about engine ticking or anything else couldn't go missing. So is a substitute of a pre-purchase inspection, a service, a good idea? Then no, definitely not, for all the answers I've given. Hope you like that question of the week, and as ever, it really helps us if you can subscribe to the channel. If you're watching this and you're not subscribed, click us a like and tell us your comments on your Aston purchase, and was there anything that you found amiss with the car that wasn't picked up on a service if it had one before you bought it, or you know, did you have a pre-purchase inspection, and you know, what did you find? Hope you like that, and we'll see you on next week's question of the week.